right. Welcome back once again to another live stream. We're going to be answering some story questions. I've got one that I want to start off with today that was emailed me based on last stream. So that's what I'm going to be starting with today once we get rolling here. Hey, Allie, good to see you. What's up, Noah? Let some people slide in here today. I'm going to light my candles in the meantime. Hey, Kane. Hey, Joseph. Good to see you guys here. Hey, Rishab, Resident 1. Good to see you all. All right. Okay. Cool. I see some people funneling in here. We're going to start in just a moment. I've got a question that I want to start. What happened to last stream, the one from yesterday? Antonio, I think it should be on the on my YouTube channel, right? Let me make sure. But it should be there. The recording should be there. If you go to the live tab, it should be there. Oh wait, no, it's not there. Huh. You're right. I will look into that. I do not know why it's not there. Okay. Let me do a quick look for you. You think they took it down? They probably did. We can't have anything nice. Blocked. Okay. This video contains copyrighted material. That's what we're seeing here. If you all want to take a look with me. It says this video contains copyrighted material, and as a result, it has been blocked worldwide. I guess me showing all of 12 seconds of Lord of the Rings is worthy of them blocking it forever and always. Classic Hollywood. Okay, anyways, let's go ahead and hop in today. I had a question that I received from Rivka, who's a member of my writing group, over email today, and I wanted to read you guys this question. It was about the live stream that we did yesterday. So let's go ahead and take a look here. Yeah, no more fun. I'll check that video and see if there's a way that I can trim it down or re-upload it. What I may also do is simply just make some clips from it and take some of the best moments from it and upload them as YouTube videos, which is what I want to do more of with these streams. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at this question here from Rivka. It's a little bit long, so I'm going to read it out for you all. Rivka said, "Hi Tyler, I always enjoy your videos. I watched your live stream from yesterday, and I have a thought about the way you refer to choices. How do you define a choice? The reason I'm asking this is because, to me, a sports game is not a choice. The way I see it, games are a conflict between two teams. Neither of them choose to lose. They both try their best to win, but one of them beats the other. Are you saying that there's a moment in the game right before the end where the losing team chooses to give up? I think that's sometimes the case, but the majority of the time people lose not because they chose to, but because they couldn't outbeat their opponent. Sometimes failure is a choice, but not always. It's the same with winners. They don't choose to win. They choose to give it their all, and if they are better at the sport than their opponent, they win. Another thought, a while ago you spoke about how you get the message of your story across by the climactic choice. You gave the example of Star Wars. Luke turns off his computer and uses the Force. You said that this is how you express the theme of your story. I think that's only half true. The message comes out when the character achieves their goal after choosing that choice. If Luke would turn off his computer, use the Force, then get blown to smithereens, that would be a very different message than him blowing up the Death Star. Totally. The way I see it is that the message of a story is directly connected to the payoff of the conflict. Does the character get what they want, or do they fail? If they get what they want, identify whatever it is that's responsible for their achievement. That's the message of the writer. If they fail, the writer is telling us what not to do. I think your defining choice is something more than the actual definition of the word. I think your definition of choice is my definition of the payoff of a conflict, the point when the character definitively achieves their goal and experiences their reward, or fails and experiences their stakes. I'm only pointing this out because I know how important clarity is to you. Clarity comes when you break things down into their component parts. Yes, mastery comes from working on each component separately before combining all the components into a masterwork. Yes. In this case, it's my opinion that you are combining two components. What do you think? So this was a very well-written, well-thought-out question, and I felt like it was worth us actually talking about it on the stream today. And so first off, let's just kind of break this into its different component points. So how do you define a choice? The reason I'm asking is because to me, a sports game is not a choice. The way I see it, games are a conflict between two teams. Neither of them choose to lose. They both try their best to win, but one of them beats the other. I think this is true in the sense of, it is a conflict between two teams. Neither of them choose to lose. They both try their best to win, but one of them wins. Yes. So here's what I would say with this. The reason that I am talking about a football game or a sports game like a choice is that there is the final decision that's going to be in that has two options, right? Two outcomes, right? So we have win, lose, right? So in a way, so these are our two potential outcomes, right? Both teams want to win, and this places them in conflict. I agree that the losers are not necessarily choosing to lose. They are usually getting beat by their opponents. What I am trying to express here is the idea that you have kind of two ways that a choice or a decision or an action point, an outcome, let's say, right? So there's two ways to debate or argue an outcome, in my perspective, inside of a story. You either have this through dialogue or you have it through action, right? In dialogue, characters are going to be sparring verbally, right? They are going to be essentially fighting back and forth verbally. Same thing in action. They are fighting back and forth, but they're doing it physically. And so they are both trying to get a similar outcome. And so, yes, I think that there is probably some more clarity I could set up in the sense of what is the outcome versus what is sort of the choices that then generate that outcome. So I think down here you mentioned that Luke turns off his computer and uses the Force. And then the outcome, you said this is how you express the theme of your story. I think that's only half true. The message comes out when the character achieves their goal after choosing that choice. So I think this is true, where, she says if Luke would turn off his computer, use the Force, then get blown to smithereens, that would be a very different message than him blowing up the Death Star, right? So I do think this is true. So maybe you could say that in the same way that Luke Skywalker, there's a choice and then the outcome is not, ideally the outcome is directly connected to the choice made, but there is a difference between the choice that has been made and the outcome that follows it, right? The reaction of that choice that follows it. So I think in that sense, the ultimate outcome of a game is, which team wins, and then the characters within the game, the players within the game, the coaches are making choices to achieve that outcome. So I think, yes, there is more clarity here that I can work in the sense of understanding the outcome versus what does the character have control over, right? Because I think that's also part of it where your character only has so much control over the outcome that's happening, but they are making choices that are going to get them to, the ultimate win or lose as close as they can. So maybe the better way to describe the football game would be that every play, every time they're going into a play, let's say, right? In a football game, every single time you make a play and then you run that play, right? You snap the ball, you run the play. The choices are the plays being run, and then sometimes the outcome of those choices are positive and sometimes the outcome of those choices are negative. And then they have the opposition is presenting their argument through action about the choice that's been made, right? So the one team wants to advance the ball, the other team wants to stop them, and then we have an outcome based on what the offensive team has chosen, what the defensive team has chosen, these sorts of things. So I think, yes, there is, I agree that there is not, sometimes there's a moment where, I agree, where the losing team chooses to give up. But yes, I think you're right here that they are both trying to win, and ultimately the choices that they are making are going to define that outcome in the end most of the time. And then for your story, let's say it's, are we persevering through the fourth quarter, or are we going to give up when it counts? No, we persevere. We choose to persevere. We run the difficult plays. We run the trick plays. We do what needs to be done. And now we win the game. So yes, I think there is a difference between the choices that characters have and the outcomes that they end up with. So yes, I think that is a good point of clarity. So thank you, Rivka, for bringing forward this question. And I think the Luke Skywalker example is also very good, right? He makes the choice to not use his targeting computer, and he makes the choice to use the Force. And then the outcome of that choice is that the Death Star is destroyed, therefore proving that the choice that he made was correct. So there's this relationship between choices and how they're affecting the outcomes, and the outcome, that is the world of your story and ultimately your message of the writer being presented in what you are positing as the outcome of the choice that character made. So hopefully that's clear. Thank you very much, Rivka, for bringing that question forward. That was very, very good, very well thought out, and that definitely gave me some more clarity. Okay, I'm going to start taking some questions here. So, Armad, why was the last video removed? Because Hollywood wants to copyright every 4 seconds that a frame of their movies are shown, I guess. We're not allowed to have any fun. Sarmad says, please describe the new framework for shorts. Actually, I think I can do that for you. Let me pull this up. And I'm hoping to have this, like these new frameworks and stuff, released to you guys very soon. I'm trying to get out of my perfectionism here and just get these things done. But I also want them to be very, very good, because I want them to last and I want them to actually be useful. Okay, no, I don't think this short one is ready to show. But I will use the normal feature framework to illustrate the difference between how you might set up a feature and how you might set up a short. One moment. And then, Ali, I see you have your hand raised in the Discord. I will definitely get to you right after this. So, this is the feature version. When you are trying to write a short, I know yesterday we looked at a short. You have something that is not going to last very long. The biggest element with a short is going to be the difference in your structure. Like, a short is not going to have 4 story circles, right? So like a feature, because it's 100 to 120 pages long, you have these 4 30-page acts, essentially, right? 25 to 30 pages acts. You have 4 of them, and they flow through the story in this way. In a short, you're going to have 1 circle, just 1, because you're going to have something like 10 to 20 pages of actual story, and so structurally, you're only going to have 1 circle. Now, other than that, other than the actual size of it, you're not going to have all these different set pieces because, again, it's shorter. You may not have a feature level character web, but you're going to have at least a protagonist and absolutely put in an antagonist, an actual other person that is the opposing force, not their mind, not their dream world, not their past, an actual character in the physical world that they are in conflict with in some way. They don't have to be in physical conflict with them, but that person needs to be in opposition of the choices that they're making, right? Like, that is what needs to happen there. So you are still going to have a concept, you're still going to have a philosophical conflict, you're still going to have all these things, but you're not necessarily going to have 15 characters. You might have 2 to 4. I think also for shorts and really for any type of storytelling, having more characters that are fully fleshed out and built out is what makes your story feel bigger, right? You don't need a $100 million budget to make your movie. You need to have 6 characters, and that costs you $0, right? I think I see again and again so many times where writers who are especially writing shorts, but I also see it a lot in features, writers are making the entire story too small. Like, there's 3 characters in your feature, and it's like, this is just going to feel so small. It's not going to, oh wait, I need to share this. This is going to feel so small. It's not going to, sorry, Discord guys, here we go. It's not going to feel large. You need to actually build out a character web. I think out of anything that it makes your story feel larger, feels fully fleshed out, feels more powerful, is going to be adding more characters. But the biggest thing is going to be in your structural flow and making sure that you essentially just have one story circle. There's a video I have on my channel. It's funny, I have 2 videos on how to write a short film. One of them is the one that's less clear. That's the one that everyone has seen. So yeah, here we go. So I got one of these videos that has 2 million views. This one right here. And this video is okay. But this video is actually the good one. So this is the one you guys should watch. This video, I am taking a episode of Rick and Morty and showing you how to write a short film based on this episode of TV. Now you might be thinking, what? Why would you use an episode of TV to discuss how to write a short film? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because most short films are very, very poorly written, and most of them are not done by people that are specifically professionally writers. Most shorts are a director trying to write something so that they can direct something, or a cinematographer trying to show off their reel, or an actor trying to get some screen time. Very rarely do you find shorts that are done by very strong writers and that are well structured, because a lot of the times, if you do have a writer who wants to write a short and is a professional writer, many times they want to experiment at that point. And I get that, but it doesn't make for strong shorts. However, TV, and especially the sitcom sort of format, is extremely tight and extremely well structured and has such a beautiful flow to it. And so this video here, I walk through exactly how this episode of Rick and Morty walks through a full story circle and has a philosophical dilemma, the 2 different viewpoints that we have in the story, right? We've got these characters here. And then how this actually plays out, how they get to the 5 at the middle, and how we go forward. So also, this is essentially a short at like 14 minutes of the episode's runtime, right? Because again, I talked about this episode exactly actually in the last live stream yesterday, where I showed you that Adult Swim video from Dan Harmon, which maybe that's what they copyrighted. And this is a fully functional short film that mainly uses 4 characters, right? So we have Morty, we have Rick, then we have Fart, the alien that they're going to save, and then we have the assassin, Crumbopulous Michael. Where is he at? That's not him. Anyways, yeah, where's this guy? Where's the assassin? Is he in here? There he is. There's the assassin. So we have 4 characters in this short. That's the biggest thing, okay? I really, 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 really think you need to have at least 4 characters when you're writing a short. Do not write these one character, I'm in my head and suddenly the house is on fire and I'm being moody. Like, these are not interesting short films. I think you want to have a real full character web, and you want to have one clear story circle that takes you through. And I think that would be an excellent practice just in general on writing, because you can write it quickly. It gives you a sense of how to actually create a character web, and it gives you a sense of how to use story circle structure. Where is my shot? Okay. Steven says, where can I find that framework template? Right now, there is a version of it inside the Practical Screenwriting course, which you can join at practicalscreenwriting.com. And then I am currently doing a major overhaul of the course right now that hopefully will be done very soon. I'm getting very close on it. And then that will also be available to you inside the Practical Screenwriting course. And we will go from there. All right, let's go ahead and take our Discord question from Ali. Hey, Ali. Can you hear me?
Hi, Tyler. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm fine. First
What's
of
your
all,
question?
I'm really, um, I've been watching your videos for so long, and I think your channel is one of the most amazing
I appreciate
channels
that.
out there because the depth um, in which you discuss the topic of screenwriting is just, I think it's one of the only channels who which does it, and the amount of value that you've produced, it's just it's amazing.
I
So
appreciate that.
I just wanted to thank you for that.
I appreciate that. What's your question
Um,
today?
so I had a few questions,
Okay.
but I think I think the question that I really want to ask is that in a lot of screenwriting courses, and so the narrative that's often told, or the thing that's often taught, is that characters need to have external goals that are well defined and that are emotional, and characters need to move towards those goals.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, stories are essentially uh, they're just characters trying to achieve something, and obstacles and hurdles basically stopping them from doing so, and the drama that creates that's what stories are, right? So uh, but there are these movies that don't really seem to follow these story structures so strictly,
Mm-hmm.
but they still kind of work. Like after watching the movie, you go like, "Oh, that was an amazing movie."
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, I saw this movie called Shame by Steve McQueen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen it or not.
I
I
haven't.
think it would be great if you have.
I have not.
Okay, so so in that movie, like it's the character doesn't really have a well defined goal, but because of the way it's told and because of the whole narrative, it just kind of works.
Mm-hmm.
But because you haven't seen that movie, I think this example will not work. So maybe you can, I'm sure you can think of movies which don't really seem to follow a story structure as such,
Mm-hmm.
but they still work because just purely because of the way they're told, or the way the because of the sound design and because of other elements, and those elements just magically come together to create a coherent narrative somehow. So can you think of such examples, or like why does this happen at all?
Okay. I don't think. Okay. So there's a story that has a looser or less clear structure can absolutely be impactful. Now, I think what the element, okay, with filmmaking specifically, you mentioned sound design or cinematography, some of these elements that are specifically part of the craft of filmmaking, right, which is a different craft from storytelling, right? Those are not the same things. Filmmaking is not storytelling. Storytelling is not filmmaking. They are two separate things that are combined together, usually, to create a beautiful story done through film. Now, I don't really believe that you can have elements just kind of magically come together in a way that makes the story functional. You can have a film that has a good energy to it, right, or a good aesthetic to it, and many people who enjoy films and filmmaking specifically can absolutely be deeply attracted to films with that aesthetic, with that vibe, with that energy that don't necessarily have a strong structure or something like this. And that's, that can totally work. There's a lot of films that are very much looser in their structural flow, but still work because of some of these other elements. Now, what I would also say is that the most fundamental driver of a story is choice, right? Is choices that the characters are making and the dilemma around those choices, right? And so when we are in scenes, what I have found watching movies or reading screenplays, have you ever noticed that sometimes you can watch a movie and you just start in the middle of it and it can be immediately gripping? Usually that's happening because there is some sort of immediate choice happening in that scene that even if you don't have context for exactly what's going on, you understand what the choice is. The choice is clear enough to where you understand it, and you just immediately kind of get a sense of where the characters are on this choice, and that is compelling because drama is choice making, and so we are drawn in by choices. That being said, many great films, or many of them critically acclaimed films, these sorts of things, have a looser structure, but the writers of those stories had a sense of how to create dramatic choices in scenes, therefore creating a story that has those dramatic choices in the scenes, and that is what carries the narrative forward, even if it doesn't have the most perfect climax or a clear midpoint or a character with a super clear goal, right? A lot of films that have characters that don't have a super clear goal or desire or want, they are hinged on the fact that there are still important choices being made through each of the scenes. And so you have a character that is more aimlessly or more, they are more flowing through life in the sense of just dealing with the problems that come towards them, but there are problems in the scenes that come up to them, and they have to make choices about those problems to move forward. And so I think a good example of a movie that has a bit of a looser structure, yet still has choices, still has philosophical conflict, it still has well-defined characters, is Tree of Life. Tree of Life is a beautifully shot movie, gorgeous sound design, excellently acted. It does not have a very strong structural flow, but what it does have is two very clear sides of kind of the mother and the father and the children living in this world of the two sides of their parents, and how the father acts, how the mother acts, and how they are dealing with the actions of the two parents. And it doesn't have, a super dramatic flow, or we're not screaming to a climax like we are in an Avengers movie, but it still has philosophical conflict. It still has those two sides embodied in the mother and embodied in the father. and there are still choices being made in the scenes, and that is what is tying the narrative together. So if you're somebody that doesn't want to have a super strong structure, and you want to have a story that has more of a flow like this, you need to have a sense of how to create scene choices, or your story will still just end up bland, and it will not be that enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, now that I think about it, I was while you were answering that question, I was constantly trying to apply that reasoning to the film that I was talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and it did make sense because even though the character, so it's uh, the actor is Michael Fassbender,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean he's this character who's like a uh, he doesn't want to commit to a relationship. He's like a playboy basically,
Mm-hmm.
and but and he just does these things, just chases his desires like a like a complete what do you like a hedonist basically.
Mm-hmm.
But when he sees that his sister, who he doesn't really get along with, also gets into relationships like these, it kind of messes him up because he sees that he's doing these things to women, not
Mm-hmm.
caring about the feelings of those women.
Mm-hmm.
But he sees his sister also getting manipulated like that by other men. So
Mm-hmm.
that basically causes this very intense conflict inside him. That okay, I can't see this happening to my sister, so like why am I doing it to other women, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Totally.
and it is yeah, and it's and like all movies, I mean, it has a certain dramatic order, and it does follow structure in that sense, right? So, I mean, I think you're right about that. I mean, it does make sense what you're saying, and like this, I think. Di- uh, so my second question that I wanted to ask also like arises out of this, which is that I'm sure you've evolved as a screenwriter over the years. For instance, certain ideas or beliefs that you would have had a few years ago, you might not now,
Yes.
maybe. Uh, so, like, would you like to like elaborate on things that you used to believe were that were true about storytelling or screenwriting
Hmm.
that you don't now, and what is it that changed those beliefs?
That's a good question. I think, what have I used to believe that I don't believe anymore off the top of my head? I think, well, I think a lot of it has been less that I have wildly shifted my views on certain things and more just I've gotten clarity in certain zones. So I think I have, ever since I got a sense of, or ever since I heard Michael Arndt talk about philosophical stakes way back in 2016 or 2017, when he did his endings video, I have essentially held to the idea that philosophical conflict is the base layer of story since that point. Um, and then it's just getting more clarity on that. And then ever since I kind of understood or found the Dan Harmon story structure, the story circle that he uses, I really found that to be an extremely helpful tool. But then I've essentially created my own version at this point. Like I don't use any of the terminology that Dan Harmon uses on the circle because I think his is not as clear as it could be. And so I've added more clarity from my perspective into his story circle. So there, it's again more clarity. And then I think another big thing was, I think my most recently, I think such an important puzzle piece was getting a lot of clarity on choices and scene choices specifically, because I had a sense of choices from like the act perspective or like the climactic perspective, but I wasn't as clear about choices in just direct relationship of how scenes flow together, where there's this nature of every dramatic moment is a dilemma between two options. And so if you are going to have a dramatic moment, you must have a choice. And then that choice ideally should be connected to your larger themes. And so I think it's less that I have wildly shifted my view on some of this stuff, more that I've just gained more and more clarity. Because really, my view on story is pretty stinking simple. Like, all I really believe is you have two big sides of the story. That is one thing. Genre, I think I've changed my mind about genre. I think genre, I used to think genre was like more of a big deal, whereas now I think it's, I think genre is probably overhyped. Like, I think you can write, there are certain conventions and things, like if you write a lot of comedies, then you're going to be better at writing jokes. But I think genre is kind of an arbitrary way to divide up stories, or like you can only work in this genre, you can only work in that genre. It's like you can really do all sorts of things, move around in genres. And I've believed in four corner opposition for a long time, and just getting more clarity. So that's the thing, is I'm not really trying to totally switch what I believe. What I'm trying to do is really get a sense of what are the foundational pieces of that story or of story, and then clarify those, go deeper into those. I'm not trying to look for more and more and more new hacks and tools and things like this to change up and shift. I am trying to get a sense of what are the elements of story that I will believe are still going to be important 30 years from now in my journey as a writer, and how can I get deeper into those things? How can I study them again and again and again and again, rather than starting off something new? Like, at this point, I don't even know how many stories I've implemented story circles into. Like, it's got to be near or over 150. So it's more about what actually works and how am I regularly implementing the things that I know work, rather than trying to find something that is totally new.
Okay. So, thanks for having me,
Yeah,
Tyler.
absolutely.
It
Thanks for coming
was
on the show.
nice talking to you.
It was lovely talking with you as well.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Let's move. Let's see. I had a request in the Discord to go through this short film video a little bit, and actually kind of pause through and go through it. So I'm going to go through this video. I see, Stevenson, that you've got your hand raised. I am going to get to you. But I do want us to, I'm going to go through this video a bit. I want us to go through this together. This is the how to write a short film video that I think is the stronger one, and I will be pausing and discussing certain pieces as it makes sense to do so. So let's begin. All right, so you've learned the fundamentals. You know about conflict, characters, yeah, so he was asking me about things I don't believe anymore. There's not 3 acts. Structure, dialogue, look at how to write a short film, and ultimately write your first feature-length screenplay. Now, before we get started, I have 2 big notes. Note number 1, please don't spend time to restrict to find examples, detailed understanding. New writer, you need to start somewhere. First time. And note number 2, I'm not going to take a look at a short film to explain how to write a short film. I'm going to take a look at the main plot of Rick and Morty episode 202. So why am I doing this? Why am I not looking at a short film? Here's the unfortunate reality. Most short films are not well-written narrative dramas. Many shorts are poetic, or they get lost in a concept, or they are experimental. True. And a lot of short films are simply made for a director's reel or to give an actor more experience. True. If you'd like to take a look at some professionally made short films for further study, I recommend going to shortoftheweek.com. This is a great website, shortoftheweek.com. Let me see what they've got going on right now. If you guys want to watch just what sort of shorts are currently coming out, this website is great. Shortoftheweek.com. They've got just like a constant running list, and then they also have like you can look at different genres. Let's see. Yeah, documentary, animation, sci-fi, comedy, drama, and they've got look at all these shorts down here. 221 horror shorts, 216 shorts about friendship, all sorts of stuff. 2,000 live action shorts. So yeah, if you're interested in doing some study of shorts, shortoftheweek.com is a great spot.
Linked below. The main plot of Rick and Morty episode 202 takes up most of the episode, at about 16 to 18 minutes of the runtime, with the B plot taking up about 3 to 5 minutes of the runtime. This makes the main story about the same length as a short film, between 10 and 20 pages. And it's a great way to take a look at how you can create a full narrative drama in a very short period of time. Now, with all that out of the way, I'm going to show you how to write a short film. So you're starting out with a few ideas. You've got a scene or two in your head, and maybe you have a concept or genre. Now let's start organizing and developing your story into something that's clear and focused. A lot of people ask me how to get ideas for screenplays or for short scripts, and I'm always confused by this question. Writers have story ideas. If you're reading novels, watching films, and trying to write, story ideas will come into your head. Getting some basic ideas to start with shouldn't be difficult for you to come back.
Let's get to
your philosophical conflict. The first thing you need to build out is your philosophical conflict. Remember my video on the purpose of conflict? In that video, I explain philosophical conflict, how it works.
So this is one thing I may I've noticed that when writers start with their philosophical conflict, or they start with the themes that are in conflict in the story that can be confusing to them, don't feel like you have to start with that. Like, start with whatever you have. Many times I jump right into my structure and I'm just like, okay, let me just get something down. Or I jump into my characters, or I do these different things. If you feel like you're stuck thinking about like, what are my themes? I don't know. Take a breath and work on another piece of the story. Build out your structure or
conflict within your story. Like I explained in the purpose of conflict video, philosophical conflict is the backbone of storytelling, and it should be the backbone of your story. So how do you build philosophical conflict into a story? What you want to do is create a viewpoint versus viewpoint conflict. Let's go to our example to see what I mean. In Rick and Morty episode 202, the philosophical conflict is based around a moral question. In the beginning of the episode, Rick meets an assassin and sells him a weapon. Morty is surprised and disgusted by this.
Okay. So the very beginning of the episode is a very simple moral quandary. This guy is an assassin. And Rick sells him a weapon. Very simple, right? So now we have this dilemma about the morality of selling weapons to assassins, right? And it's essentially, is this the same as pulling the trigger? Does it matter? This kind of thing.
Assassin and
so notice too that when we're talking about theme, when we're talking about adding in a moral dilemma, these kinds of things, it is physical, right? We are adding in a physical element into the story. Right? So we're not just talking here. We start with an action, right? We start with a choice. Rick chooses to sell this weapon to this assassin. Morty is protesting.
Sells him a weapon. Morty is surprised and disgusted by this.
You sell weapons to killers for money?
Ugh, you've got what the intergalactic call a very planetary mindset, Morty. It's more complicated out here.
Right?
Here we see a difference in Rick's and Morty's moral viewpoints. Morty's disgust rises when he realizes that Rick only sold the weapon so that he could go to an arcade. But Rick doesn't care at all.
So already, all of their dialogue is about the two sides that they are on. Morty thinks it was the wrong choice to sell the weapon to the killer. Rick doesn't think it matters.
Sold a gun to a murderer so you could play video games?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you spend all day shuffling words around, you can make anything sound bad, Morty.
Now we can define the philosophical conflict of the episode. The philosophical conflict comes down into two viewpoints: absolute morality versus moral relativism.
So, and this is kind of where I can probably get even clearer, because I'm talking about some super big ideas here, which this is kind of what the episode is about, right? Morty is, and in the show, Morty is the one who is of the normal world, right? He's the one who lives in the suburbia house. He has a nuclear family. Things are relatively normal for him. He has a sort of normal American morality to a certain extent, whereas Rick has this crazy morality as the essentially like ultimate nihilist, right? He can go anywhere he wants, he can hop dimensions, he can do all these things. And so he doesn't have this sense that his actions have consequences in the same way that Morty does. And so, again, if you want to build characters with some strength, you need to actually think about what they believe as people. And if you want to think about what your characters believe as people, then you have to think about what you believe as a person.
Morty believes that Rick selling a gun to an assassin is objectively wrong, and Morty believes that life is objectively valuable. Rick believes that it doesn't matter. He believes he can do what he wants and that he defines his own morality.
Selling a gun to a hitman is the same as pulling the trigger.
It's also the same as doing nothing. If Crumbopulous Michael wants someone dead, there's not a lot anyone can do to stop him.
Also notice here with the dialogue, this is dialogue about the choice that was just made, right? So you can have this as well, right? The dialogue about the choice doesn't always have to be before. It was a little bit in this episode, and then after this choice is made, Morty is still angry, right? He's still angry, and he's talking about the choice that Rick just made, and because Rick is refusing to see Morty's side, now Morty is going to be the one to make his choice, and now he is going to start the conflict of the story up and really take control of the narrative.
So this story has a very clear philosophical conflict. It is clearly asking questions like, is it morally wrong to supply weapons to killers? Is there an absolute standard of morality? And these questions are expressed through the clear viewpoints of the characters. Not every Rick and Morty episode has the philosophical conflict as clear and specific as this one, but this one is very useful to get an understanding of how to use philosophical conflict correctly. It doesn't matter if your story is 10 pages long or 3,000 pages long. You still need specific philosophical conflict that will drive the events of the story. Once you establish your philosophical conflict, it's time to attach beliefs to your different characters. So I explained that you need to create a viewpoint versus viewpoint dilemma in your philosophical conflict. Now you need to attach different beliefs within those ideas onto your characters. Your characters will hold different points of view.
Yeah, we get
But
it. I need to
clearly asking own morality, and these belief that is important for the philosophical conflict of some sort, and that right and he believes he clearly see.
Can do to stop him.
Now that you have created this separation, the audience is now involved in the philosophical conflict. As a viewer, you are participating in the moral dilemma.
Correct. So this is the most important part of story, kind of entirely, right? Every time you are interacting with a story, you are participating in it, right? As a viewer, you are not separate from it. You are also participating in the dilemma. And so if you make a story that is meaningful and about something important, then you are literally affecting whoever views that story, right? You are taking them through your thought process. And that is super cool to me. That is super cool because then you're able to force people to think and make them challenge what they think and make them come up with debates and arguments for their particular points of view.
You're not necessarily consciously laying out the different viewpoints in your mind as you watch the story unfold, but you are unconsciously involved in this moral dilemma.
Yes.
And what happens in the story will either challenge or confirm your personal beliefs on the philosophical conflict.
Yes.
This is how you create empathy between the audience and your characters in your own story. And this is how you can really invest your audience in wondering what happens next in your story. Now let's take a quick look at the secondary characters in this episode. Crumbopulous Michael is the assassin that buys the weapon from Rick. K. Michael has no code of ethics whatsoever. He literally says so in the dialogue. It's a comedic line, but it is also his actual philosophical view in the story.
Nice to meet you, Morty. Listen, if you ever need anybody murdered, please give me a call.
You're
I'm very
giving him a
discreet.
card?
I have no code of ethics. I will kill anyone, anywhere. Children, animals, old people, doesn't matter. I just love killing.
K. Michael and
That's a belief right there. Oh, man.
Rick hold somewhat similar philosophical beliefs. Like Rick, K. Michael clearly does not hold a belief in absolute.
Right, so this is important here, right? The character web. So this is the reason that a character web is so important is because even though you have characters that are on the same side of the belief, right? Like K. Michael and Rick here, they are also different people with different wants, different desires, and different situations. And so what you're doing is you are creating more like specificity in your world and more character dynamics because you have characters that have the same beliefs but then want different things, do different things, and then are challenged by characters on the other side that have opposite beliefs but also want different things, right? And so just because two characters agree doesn't make them the same person, right? And they still want different things, they will still do different things, and that's what makes your story dynamic.
Absolute morality. The nebulous being named Fart that Morty saves halfway through the episode holds a philosophical point of view, but I'll get into that more in the next section. What's important is that he introduces conflict that forces Morty to make choices based upon what he believes.
Morty, don't do it. Morty! Morty, you idiot!
Oh, crap. Let's get you out of here.
K. Michael and Fart are characters that are important, but secondary in regards to the philosophical conflict. Rick and Morty are the two who are opposing each other philosophically. K. Michael and Fart become elements of that philosophical conflict playing out. So when you're building your characters, attach specific philosophical beliefs to them that will define who your characters are as people.
This is why I think having at least 4 characters in your short can be so helpful. Because the fact that Morty is making decisions about Fart, the fact that Rick is making decisions about Crumbopulous Michael, the fact that now Rick and Morty have to make decisions about each other, it just makes the whole story feel much more dynamic. But when it's just one character by themselves, or 2 characters only, the story feels so small, and you're not really able to actually say that much of value. I think the reality is, I think a lot of the reasons that people write one character short films is because they're lonely. Because they are being autobiographical with their own life to a certain extent. Where they're like, oh, it's just me by myself, so I'm going to write a story about a character by themselves. Maybe I'm wrong, but that is seemingly how it feels a lot of the time when I speak with writers.
And will also define their actions, placing them in conflict with the other characters around them. Now that you have your philosophical conflict and your characters, let's talk about action and structure. You should try to build out your story using the principles of narrative drama and story momentum. Many writers learn about story structure as it relates to screenplays and TV shows, but when they get to a short script, they toss structure completely out of the window as if it doesn't matter.
Correct.
But this is a terrible idea. Story structure matters just as much in a short script as it does in a feature-length screenplay. So how should you structure your short script? The most effective way I've found is to use Dan Harmon's story circle. I explained how the story circle works in this video. Harmon's story circle is an extremely versatile and organic way of structuring your story, and it can be used for an entire feature-length screenplay or a single scene, because it is able to fractal down and be used in different pieces.
That's another thing. You can use a story circle for a single scene, but I don't recommend it. I think it's way easier just to think about your scene as a singular choice, not as a story circle. When I've worked with writers that are trying to implement a story circle into their scene, it becomes too complex. I think it's best to think about story circles at the top level and at the act level, and then use my choice formula or my sense of, thinking about your story choice in the scene rather than your story circle structure.
Pieces of a story, it works perfectly in helping you build a strong short script. So let's break down how this Rick and Morty episode fits into the story circle, and also show how the characters' actions are motivated by their beliefs. At 1, our character is Morty. Morty believes in an absolute morality. Rick stands on the other side of the moral spectrum. He does not believe in any sort of objective morality. In the very beginning, Morty encounters a philosophical problem. Rick sells a gun to an assassin. At 2, now Morty formulates his want.
So this is kind of interesting, right? Where Morty, like the inciting incident is, you could consider it to be the selling the gun to Combropulus Michael, but Morty has not acted yet. This action gives him his desire, and then we go forward from there. So we'll watch.
For the story, Morty wants to fix the ethical problem that Rick has created.
You know, you could stop this killing from happening, Rick. You know, you did a bad thing selling that gun, but you could undo it if you wanted.
At number 3, Morty enters an unfamiliar situation when he decides to go after K. Michael.
Okay, so that's probably incorrect. I think this is still part of the 2. But
Morty does this because of his philosophical belief that what Rick did was objectively wrong, and that Rick's action.
so I think, yeah, so this is kind of something that you see pretty regularly in stories where the 3, so the 3 does kind of happen before the 2. The 3 creates the desire to actually go after. So the opening is the inciting incident where he sells the gun to Combropulus Michael, and now this gives Morty his want, his 2. So the 3 and the 2 are kind of reversed here, which is fine if you're starting out with a character that is essentially they're whole, they're relaxed, they don't really want anything, they're just hanging out, and then a problem arises that now they want to solve. And so this is kind of that situation where you have a 1-3-2 rather than a 1-2-3. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys.
Should be righted. At number 4, Morty tracks down K. Michael quickly.
That is correct.
You have arrived at Combropulus Michael. Your destination is below.
At number 5, Morty gets what he wants when he stops K. Michael from killing his target. Morty has completed his philosophical mission and put the world back to its moral neutrality as Morty sees it.
This is one of the most important pieces of structure right here, and if you can nail this, it's really going to help your shorts work. Giving your character their desire halfway through is one of the most useful story tools I've ever found, because you essentially give them what they want halfway through, therefore the story is supposed to end, and then you break it up into a huge problem, and now they are in the second half of the story, which is the unexpected part. Right? When you start off, there's a certain level of understanding of, okay, I have a desire, I want to do this thing, so I'm going to go do that thing. I'm going to go achieve this goal. There's a certain expectation that the character has to say, this is going to work out in this particular way. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to go get the thing, save the person. In this case, Morty stops K. Michael from killing his target. And supposedly at this point, this story would resolve. But of course, it's not going to, because now we have our surprise problem.
The nebulous being Fart now asks Morty to save him. Rick thinks this is a terrible idea, again following his belief that there is no objective morality and that we should not just save others for no reason. But Morty frees Fart. And this is the midpoint of the story. Notice that in just a few short minutes, we have had a major philosophical conflict, characters taking action based upon their beliefs, and a clear midpoint turning point. But at 6, now Morty's actions come at a cost. Things are not as simple as Morty believes. As Rick and Morty try to escape with Fart, Morty realizes that saving Fart's life is coming at the cost of many other lives, and Rick openly challenges Morty on this.
Hey, Morty, remember when you said selling a gun was as bad as pulling the trigger? How do you feel about all these people that are getting killed today because of your choices?
I did the right thing, Rick!
At number 7, Morty returns back to his familiar situation by finishing the conflict of the story when he gets Fart to his portal to go back to his unit.
Okay, so this is something I've also adjusted. And this is why the whole 7 being the return is kind of unclear. When was this video made? Yeah, this was 3 years ago. So rather than thinking about the 7 as the return, the 7 is the resolution of the story's conflict, which means it's the climax, right? The return is less about going home. It can be, but it's more about ending the drama of the story. And so in this case, Morty is about to make a final climactic decision that ends the conflict for the episode entirely.
Universe. And now we get the philosophical climax of the story. Up until this point, Morty believes he has done the right thing. Until now.
We will be back for your cleansing.
Cleansing?
Carbon-based life is a threat to all higher life. To us, you are what you would call a disease. Wherever we discover you, we cure it. You said yourself that life must be protected even through sacrifice.
And this is a defining moment. At number 8, and we move to the last point. Morty changes. Morty kills Fart to save his universe from...
So this is the 7. This is the choice right here. This is the 7. I know I have it a little wrong in the video.
Last point. Morty changes.
This is also why, like, video essays can be frustrating, because I feel like they're not correct. Anyways, this is the 7. Morty pulling the trigger is the 7.
Morty kills
It is the climactic choice.
Fart to save his universe from being destroyed. This action represents a philosophical change in Morty. Morty realizes that the world is grayer than he thought it was. And this is where the story makes a philosophical statement. The story is saying that knowing what the right thing to do is a lot more difficult than we realize, and that things are not always as clear as we'd like them to be. In this episode, Rick wins the philosophical conflict, and the story gives Rick a moment to gloat.
Morty, I know I picked on your core beliefs and decision-making a lot today, but I am glad that you insisted on getting that fart home. You know, at least all the death and destruction wasn't for nothing, you know?
This structure gives us a story with clear momentum and narrative drive. It allows the characters to take action and make decisions and deal with the consequences of those actions. And it's all done in a very short time frame. Alright, let's review. Your story will be about philosophical beliefs and differing points of view, also known as the philosophical conflict. Then, these beliefs will be placed onto your characters. Different characters will hold different beliefs, and those beliefs will be in conflict with one another. Then your characters take actions based upon their beliefs. The actions of your characters based upon their beliefs define the external and internal conflicts. Allowing your characters to take action and deal with the consequences of their actions will build narrative momentum. So let me make this as simple as possible for you. Beliefs plus characters plus action equals character action motivated by beliefs.
Yeah, this is not that
This writers typing in the comments telling me that this is I'm learning that I don't need to.
Okay, so hopefully that was helpful to you. I really think that if you can have 4 characters in your short and you would just use one story circle, that will be extremely helpful to you. And if you want to join the Discord and you want to send me a document and bring forward your short story circle, this kind of thing, you can absolutely do so. Okay, let's take another question. I see Stevenson back again. Let's pull him in.
Hello.
What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
Doing well. What's your question today?
Well, first off, that was a great breakdown of one of your older videos, and it was really helpful. I appreciate that you did that.
Excellent. Good to hear.
And okay, you said that people can send like a document for you to look through, right? I have a Google document. Does that work?
Yeah, drop the share. Take the share link and then drop it in the live stream stage chat. And then make sure that
share link.
Yeah. So if you're looking at my screen now, there's a share button, top right. You click that share button, and then you can you can copy the link and send it to me, and you can also give me edit access. If you can give me edit access, that would be muy bueno.
Okay. I'm sorry because I still haven't like looked at everything regarding Discord. So the share button is, how does it look like?
So go into your document. You have a Google Doc, correct?
Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean like the share button like in Discord.
There is no share button in Discord.
I gotta go to the Google document.
Yes, sir. I'm saying go to Google
Okay.
Docs. At the top right of your Google Docs, there's a share button. Copy the link. Put the link in the stage chat, and I can take a look.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Perfect.
Okay. 1 second. Let me see if this works. Can you see it?
I do. All right, let me grab this. I'm going to do this real quick. Also, on YouTube, are you guys enjoying the stream? Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you guys are enjoying today's stream. Let me know if that breakdown of my older video was helpful for you.
Okay.
All right.
Here's what I have.
Right.
I was hoping. Now, let me know if you have time to do this. If you don't, I completely understand. I wanted to ask you a favor. As you can see, you have 3 short stories. These are not my stories, by the way.
Okay.
Just want to let you know that.
Okay.
I was hoping that you could read through them, explain what these stories are missing and how they could be improved. Rate them on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 being the best, 1 being the worst, and see if you can like see and define like the moral of the stories, if there are any.
So these are not your stories? Who wrote these?
No. These are stories from various pop culture, movies, films, games, etc. These are stories that I personally like, that I've studied.
Okay.
I want to see your viewpoint on these stories.
Okay, sure. Yeah, let's do this. We'll just start with this first one here that's about a page. So let me read this out. Mm-hmm. There were once 3 brothers who were traveling along a lonely, winding road at twilight. In time, the brothers reached a river too treacherous to pass. But being taught in the magical arts, the 3 brothers simply waved their wands and made a bridge. Before they could cross, however, they found their path blocked by a hooded figure. It was Death, and he felt cheated. Cheated because travelers would normally drown in the river, but Death was cunning. He pretended to congratulate the 3 brothers on their magic and said that they each had earned a prize for having been clever enough to evade him. The oldest asked for a wand more powerful than any in existence, so Death fashioned him one from an elder tree that stood nearby. The second brother decided that he wanted to humiliate Death even further and asked for the power to recall loved ones from the grave. So Death plucked a stone from the river and offered it to him. Finally, Death turned to the third brother, a humble man. He asked for something that would allow him to go forth from that place without being followed by Death. And so it was that Death reluctantly handed over his own cloak of invisibility. The first brother traveled to a distant village where the first brother traveled to a distant village where with the elder wand in hand, he killed a wizard with whom he had once quarreled. Drunk with power that the elder wand had given him, he bragged of his invincibility. But that night another wizard stole the wand and slit the brother's throat for good measure. And so Death took the first brother for his own. The second brother journeyed to his home, where he took the stone and turned it thrice in hand. To his delight, the girl who he had hoped to marry before her untimely death appeared before him. Yet soon she turned sad and cold, for she did not belong in the mortal world. Driven mad with hopeless longing, the second brother killed himself so as to join her, and so Death took the second brother. As for the third brother, Death searched for many years but was never able to find him. Only when he attained a great age did the youngest brother shed the cloak of invisibility and give it to his son. He then greeted Death as an old friend and went with him gladly, departing this life as equals. Okay.
What you think about the first story?
It's kind of interesting. I don't know what it's trying to say. But I mean, so what I'm seeing here is like a story about people trying to cheat death, and death beats them, except for the third brother, and then that's kind of mainly it, essentially. What's the original like medium of this story? Is it a game? Is it a TV show? Or a book?
It's a movie. This story comes from Harry Potter: The Deathly Hallows Part 2, if I'm not mistaken.
Gotcha.
And this story has been like, when this story like came out, like when the movie came out, it kind of went viral, and to this day, people are still like fascinated by this short story in the movie, and me as well. So a lot of people come up with their own theories to like the moral of the story and how well the story is executed, etc. A lot of people think that the story or the moral revolves around humility and being humble about not trying to cheat death, but yet the third brother was smart enough to not trust death, and instead he what's the way to say it?
He kind of respects death, and because of that, he's able to survive.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of like a parable, right? Like,
yes.
You know, it's got like kind of a parable structure here, mainly, you know, and in the moral kind of being, I think, respect. And so you kind of have this, to break it down from kind of my viewpoints, you've got your philosophical views of, you could kind of say like maybe arrogance versus respect, that kind of thing. And then the second brother is somewhat within that, or like yeah, he thinks he can get what he wants from death and he cannot. So it may be, you know, you could kind of break it down like that, about this is the story about arrogance versus respect. And then ultimately, yeah, we've got like, this is our first scene, right? This kind of sets up and so then the choice being the different gifts given by death, right? He does not kill them, and he gives them these different gifts. And then we have the choice here. Death takes first brother, or outcome, I guess, or the outcome of, yeah. And so then each of the brothers choose different things here, and that ends up with changes in the outcome, right? Which is kind of interesting, because that's what we were discussing at the beginning of the stream with Rivka's story, with what Rivka had noted about like outcomes versus the choices. So yeah, we have 3 choices that are made, and then we have 3 different outcomes based on those choices. And then structurally, it doesn't really have like a, you know, it's not a feature, right? It's not supposed to be a long form narrative drama. So we essentially have, what it really breaks down into is, this first half is the setup, right? This first opening scene is kind of the setup of the story. And then the second half is our payoff. Where then now we see what is the outcome of the choices that were made here. And then that's essentially how it works. So it's got a pretty simple structure. And then if you wanted to add in the story circles, we've got, the first is the 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got 3 brothers want to cross the river. Pretty simple. They encounter death, and then each brother chooses different gifts from death. So we have character here, want here, inciting problem. They encounter death. And then we have our important choice. Each brother chooses different gifts from death. Then we've got each of them has their own kind of like 5, 6, 7, 8. We kind of go like this, where each of them has, they all have the kind of the same setup, and then we see the outcomes or the payoffs in different, like in their own way. So then you have first brother kills wizard, right? He gets what he wants in the sense of he is able to wield the power given to him by death. But then another wizard kills him, and then essentially there is no 7. Like, that's kind of what happened. Death wins. Then second brother brings back girl. He gets what he wants, but then she turns sad and cold, and he does have a 7. He does make a choice here. He kills himself to join her, and again, death wins. And then here, third brother is able to hide from death, and then essentially like, doesn't have a 6 really, and then chooses to and then gives cloak to his son, and then greets death as an old friend in the end. And so what's kind of interesting is the first brother does not get to make a choice after his initial desire to kill this wizard, right? He kills this wizard. Tyler, I want a new video. I know, Chris, I know. He kills this wizard, doesn't make a choice here because another wizard kills him in the 6, and that's the end, right? The story essentially ends at the 6. This is the surprise problem. So this would be.
And by the way, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to mention, like, I like the fact that the whole story circle. You don't have to have every element of the story circle to make a story. Like, it's basically some stories don't have to have a 6 or a 7. Correct?
Yeah, so yes and no. What I would say is, So okay, if you have, let's break this out. Let's look at our circle beats. So we have our story circle here. We've got character, we've got want, we've got like inciting problem, we've got choice, we've got want achieved, we've got surprise problem, and then climactic choice, and then new character status quo, right? New character change, this kind of thing. So you absolutely need a character. You essentially cannot tell a story without one.
Yes, of course.
These two can be flipped if you want to, in the sense of in the Rick and Morty episode we looked at today, there's kind of a sense that Morty's inciting incident happens before. Morty's inciting incident creates his desire, right? So that story kind of works like this, where Rick sells gun to assassin, and because of that, now Morty wants to undo Rick's action, right? And so you can have it that way, but you are going to have a want and you are going to have an inciting problem, even if the inciting problem happens first. You're not going to be able to make the story without an inciting problem. If the character takes no action, doesn't have a want, you're not really able to do anything. Now, the choice here is going to be this character's action to fulfill the want. Therefore, you kind of need a choice here. Now, where you can have things be different is if you have a want achieved and the story ends here, then, and you, let's say, take these away, then you have like half of a story, right? Where you have the character kind of went after something and it worked out for them, and it's just kind of a non-dramatic story. You essentially cut out your payoff, right? Because that's what this beat This is why the speed is so important, because this really creates kind of your climactic moment, right? It creates this situation where, okay, we're going after what we want. Things are good. Oh no, huge problem we did not expect, right? So you're usually going to have
further, yeah.
Go ahead.
And it further escalates the story.
Correct. Further escalates the story. And then that escalation can allow for a climactic choice. Now, if you want to have a downer ending where your character loses, like in the example of our first brother in your Harry Potter story, then the story can end here. There is no climactic choice, but there is a new character status quo, right? Now death wins, but there's just no climactic choice made by that character. Or you can give them the opportunity to make a climactic choice, like we have in the second brother, where he does have the opportunity to make a choice after his girl turns sad and cold, and he makes a choice to kill himself to join her, and that becomes the climax, right? He makes a definitive final choice that ends the conflict for him in the story. So all that to say, most of the time you need every single beat. And I think you should think about the story as much as possible, or think about the story circle as a full and complete unit. Because if you cut a particular piece out, you can do this, but it doesn't necessarily, you have to have a real understanding of what it is you're doing. So I think it's better to start by writing stories that have the entire circle flow in them, so that you can get used to what it feels like to write a complete, coherent story. And only then do I think you should experiment and try other things. But I think it would be extremely beneficial for writers to write 5-10-page short scripts all using a story circle and just get used to the feeling of how it works before saying, okay, now I'm going to take beats out and that sort of stuff. Because I think when writers are constantly looking for exceptions immediately, that kind of keeps them in a beginning state as a writer, because they're not actually practicing the skill, right? They're not practicing the craft. They're still in this mindset that writing is all about inspiration. And of course you need inspiration to write, but you have to understand that creativity and structure go together, right? They are a unit that work together. If you don't have a sense of structure, then your ideas are never going to align themselves in a way that makes for something worth watching.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha. This is excellent. Because this helps me to better study and break down stories as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, before we move to the next two way quicker stories, would you rate this story on a scale of 1 to 5?
On a scale of 1 to 5, I mean, I think as a parable, it definitely is complete. I think where there's a clear beginning, there's a clear setup portion and a clear payoff portion. There's clear choices being made and there's clear resolutions throughout. So I would say, yeah, I mean, I think it's working nicely. I don't really have things I think are not working in it. So in that sense, I would give it a 5.
Okay, excellent.
One thing I want to also show, I was looking this up here. This is from Dan Harmon. This is his website, or it used to be, I think, Channel 101. But this is written by him. And in this, he is saying down here, let me make sure you guys can see this. How do I zoom in quickly? I don't even know. Is it? Yes, here we go. Okay, great. So he says, why do stories have to follow this structure? Question. And he says, it's not that stories have to follow this structure. It's that without some semblance of the story, of the structure, it's not recognizable as a story. I learned about iconography from working with Rob Schraub for several years. In cartooning, you have to draw a certain combination of lines before the audience is going to universally recognize what you've drawn. If I draw a cylinder, I can tell you it's a banana, but I can't make you think banana on your own unless I make it yellow, taper the ends, and give it some sort of curvature. To further extend this metaphor, sometimes bananas are green in real life. If I make a green, tapered, curved cylinder, does it look like a banana? It looks like a pepper. You can jump up and down and scream about how you just drew a perfectly good banana because it looks just as much like a real banana as a yellow one. Stupid filmmaker. But I'm telling you, dude, it's a pepper. Until you put more time and energy into giving it other recognizable banana qualities, for instance, drawing it half peeled, okay, now it's a green banana, you blew my mind. Likewise, I'm saying there's 8 steps to drawing a universally recognizable story. Can you skip some of them? Yeah, I do it all the time. The road of trials in Call Me Cobra is a guy sitting down at a table. If I had an extra 30 seconds, blah, 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 blah. So the point is like a story is there is an objective nature to what a story is. It's very abstract because it's sort of in our heads, and it's like, oh, it's hard to define because it's this thing that doesn't exist like a banana does, right? It's not a banana. It's not something you can hold in your hand. It's this abstract sort of mental thing that we're playing with, but there is a universally recognizable element to the thing that we are creating. So because of that, we do need to have some semblance of structure.
Totally understand.
Cool. All right. And so you wanted to look at these other 2 stories as well, correct?
Yes, and I made sure that these 2 are way shorter.
Cool. All right. Let's look at your second one, The Heavenly Strike. Long ago, when the island of Tsushima was first settled, a strange and terrible thunderstorm swept across our island. Wherever lightning struck, beasts of lightning appeared. These violent creatures tore through villages, causing death and destruction, moving too quickly to be stopped. The people knew only one man who could possibly stand against the lightning beasts, Shigenori, the fastest swordsman in all of Tsushima. Shigenori never lost a duel. With years of practice, he had created the Heavenly Strike, an attack that struck quicker than the eye could follow. Shigenori lured the creatures to a desolate beach in Komatsu, where the sand would slow their movement. Their clash turned the sand to ash and bleached the leaves of trees white. Shigenori's Heavenly Strike cut through them faster than they could move. As the final beast fell, the storm cleared, and Tsushima was safe again. Shigenori began a life of seclusion. Few students found him, and only the bravest and most skilled proved worthy of learning the Heavenly Strike. When a storm approaches, a sword is placed at Shigenori's rest by a student who knows of its location to ward off attacks from the beasts of nature. Okay, so I feel like this is more of a exposition dump than a story. We're getting a sense of, I mean, I guess it could work. Let's see. So we've kind of got our big problem is terrible thunderstorm creates beasts of lightning. And then we have Shigenori uses the Heavenly Strike to defend the island, and it's essentially like he defends the island, right? So then what we have here is there's no payoff, right? No payoff or climax. So really how it reads is, it reads as the opening setup, essentially exposition, right? We get a sense of Shigenori. We get a sense of his desire to keep Tsushima safe, and then he defends the island, but there's no secondary story to it. It's more like, here's what happened to this guy long ago. This is why this feels more like a piece of exposition rather than like a complete story on its own.
Okay, and with this story, what would you do to make it more meaningful and make it a full story?
Well, all I would do is, okay, we've got, when a storm approaches, a sword is placed at Shigenori's rest by a student who knows of its location to ward off attacks. To me, it would just be like, okay, what would our 6 be? To me, the 6 would be like the beast's return in some way, or like, you know, a more powerful beast comes. because then it's directly tied to this 3, because there should be a relationship between your inciting problem and your surprise problem here. And then it would essentially be, okay, how does either Shigenori or his students later on defend against the more powerful beasts, and then do they win or lose? So it would just essentially be what happens next to actually ward them off. As of now, so there's kind of like, you can think about this a couple different ways, right? The way that it is written feels like a piece of exposition before we start up with a new character in the present that we're then going to go forward and watch them actually be the one to handle whatever happens next. You could, like, this 1 through 5 could absolutely be broken into its own full Shigenori circle, where we watch him, where rather than just getting this quick description about what he did, we see his desire to keep it safe, and then he has to, I would say the story would be the beasts appear, and then he is maybe unable to fully beat them, and therefore then must learn the Heavenly Strike, and then does learn the Heavenly Strike, and then our climax would be uses the Heavenly Strike against these beasts, and then he wins. That would be the Shigenori story. Or we sort of jump forward and pick up from here and say, okay, who's now the character that's going to deal with the problem that arises going forward?
Gotcha. And by the way, this particular story is from a video game called Ghost of Tsushima.
Okay.
And this little story here is basically exposition to explain the Heavenly Strike. It gives you an origin of what that technique is and who created it. Because in the game, basically, like, this technique, you get this technique if you go through. It's a side quest. This story explains the origin of the ability that you want to get.
Totally. Yeah, so it's a piece of exposition in the game. That's exactly why it feels like a piece of exposition here and not a full story. That makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. So now, if this was a story, what would you rate this on a scale of 1 to 5?
Just by what's written in front of me? I mean, probably a 2. It's not complete. I would say we have half a story here. We have up to the 5. We do not have a climactic movement. We only have a setup here. So this is a paragraph of setup. That's why it's exposition.
Okay, gotcha. This is an excellent breakdown, by the way.
Perfect.
Like, I really hope this could potentially help anyone else that's watching this as well.
Yeah,
in
totally.
some way, shape, or form.
I hope so too. All right, let's continue on. This is a fun exercise. Let's look at your final. How do you say this name?
Atreus.
Atreus? Okay. All right. Atreus of Sparta. In the ancient times of Greece, there existed men who were trained from birth to become great warriors known as Spartans. Their lives were discipline, duty, battle, and death. Life was grim, and they greeted it grimly. But Atreus of Sparta was unlike the rest of his comrades. He wore a smile even in the worst of times. He was happy. He inspired his fellow Spartans to hope that though they were machines of war, yet there was humanity in them, goodness. When the day came for him to lay down his life in battle, his sacrifice saved countless others and turned the tide of a battle in the favor of the Spartans. His general carried him home on his shield and buried him with all the honors of Spartan custom. His memory served as a comfort in dark times. Okay, so this one is another kind of half story, or I guess it's like somewhat exposition. I think what's most notable about this one is that it is probably the least specific out of any of them, right? So we're talking about the Spartans, which is good. It's good we have the Spartans, but we don't really meet any other characters other than Atreus here, wore a smile, his fellow Spartans, their machines of war, humanity in them. And then we don't know really much about this battle, who they're fighting, why we are against these people in particular. His sacrifice saved countless others. We don't really know what he did. Turned the tide of the battle in favor of Spartans. His general, which is good that we have that, but not super specific. So, yeah, I mean, it feels like a piece of exposition that's also a little vague too. Like, I think if this was going to be in a game or something like that, I would like to know maybe a little bit more. What was the sacrifice? If we have this character, we've got this character that we have a very specific trait given to them, right? We have the fact that this is the happy Spartan, right? All of them are grim. He's the happy one. I would love to know how his personality played into his sacrifice and death in a way that would be interesting for the story. So I think that this is a piece of exposition that is not specific enough in my view. I think the way that he dies should be directly connected to his countenance and the way that he is different from the other Spartans.
Do you have like a example as to how that could be? I was trying to think of one for a while, but sure. I couldn't think of one.
I mean, I think a simple one might be maybe he's with other Spartans in a particular, and then he's with other Spartans in this battle. They get caught in a particular point, and now he has this decision between sacrificing himself or the entire group of Spartans dying. So maybe right before he charges to sacrifice himself, lay down his life for his other Spartans, he kind of turns around, flashes them a smile, something like this, and then goes forward. So it doesn't even have to be like that complicated. It's just like we're seeing what makes him special, his character trait, active in how he's actually ending that climactic moment, how he is going forward and making this change.
Like cap off like his character arc, or to show just who he is as a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's similar to the one above in the sense that it's a piece of exposition, but I think it's also less specific than the one we get here. With here, we get some more specificity. We get a little bit of what's going on and these kinds of things. This one I think is very similar to the one above, but is again exposition and a little bit less specific. However, we do get the climax, even though it's fairly unspecific. This is our 7, right? This is the climax of Atreus' story, where he makes this climactic decision, sacrifices himself, saves his other fellow Spartans, and that is our climax.
And by the way, you will be right. This is from another game. Mm-hmm. It's from God of War 2018, I think. Basically, there's two main characters, a father and son. Mm-hmm. The son's name is Atreus, and his son was wondering where he got his name from, and his father tells him this story.
Okay.
And from from your review of this, I would say you would rate this story a 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like, so again, when you have, it's interesting when we're looking at stories that are within stories, right? You're looking at a moment of exposition within a story that's happening. And I'm most interested in the big story that's being told. So in regards to like God of War, I would be most interested in the actual story flow of the game itself rather than some of these smaller moments that are pieces of exposition. If I saw this in like a screenplay, I wouldn't necessarily, and it was like, let's say somebody wrote the God of War screenplay and I was looking at it and they had this piece of exposition and like this was essentially dialogue said by the main character in God of War. I forget his name. That I wouldn't be super picky about this, right? I would say like, okay, cool. Maybe we get a little bit. I would probably say, hey, maybe we get some more detail here, just so that I have a little bit like just to make this expositional story feel a little more unique, right? How does Atreus die? At the very least, I would add some sort of like he flashes a smile or makes a joke or something like that, right? He turns around to them and he said, whatever he might say, I don't know off the top of my head, but I would maybe make a note for that. But an expositional moment like this within a story, I'm not going to be as picky about. I'm most concerned with the actual flow of the game, right? The larger story at hand, and how that is happening. And so really this, if you think about it, this moment is a piece of exposition that probably happens around around some sort of scene of choice or moment of choice between the father and the son in the game.
Okay, got you. Oh, that's it. I truly appreciate you taking the time to analyze and break these stories down and explain why they work, why they don't work, what they need, what they don't need, etc. And I see someone in the Discord chat, Joseph. I appreciate that this is actually helpful to you as well, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this forward. This was a great exercise.
Welcome, man. And again, thank you for your time.
Totally.
Have a nice day, man.
You too. All right, I see IQ Scorpion has his hand raised in the Discord. We're going to go to him next. Or her.
Hello, how are you?
I'm
That's
good.
my first question.
What's your question
Okay,
today?
so I got like two questions. First one is, and the two are very quick. First one is, what's the difference between script and the screenplay?
No
Like,
real difference, I think. Go ahead.
Because I'm literally very new to the writing in the TV series, movies, etc.
Sure. A
Idea.
lot of the times it's not a huge difference. It's just like a screenplay is usually talking about a feature film's screenplay, right? Like a feature film being like 100 pages long, like mainly that is what people are talking about when they say the word screenplay. But you could also say a pilot screenplay, or you could say like a TV show's screenplay, right, for an episode screenplay, something like that. But so it's more of the, I guess you could say like more proper terminology for script. That's how I understand it. Maybe there's more like insider industry stuff about what's what, but it's I would say it's just screenplay is more a formal way of saying script.
Uh-huh. My second question, if I want like to start my project, which is a TV series, if I want to learn about the scripts and screenplays, does the short film videos help me, or is there like type videos that I should watch?
What are you trying to write?
Like a TV series, like a TV show.
Yeah, so the short film videos, like the one I showed you, can definitely be helpful in the sense of like what you're trying to learn is story fundamentals first and foremost, regardless of exact medium, right? So whether you're telling a short, whether you're writing a book, whether you're writing a feature-length screenplay, there are going to be universal elements that are going to be across those different types of stories, right? You're going to have theme, you're going to have philosophical conflict, you're going to have characters, you're going to have structure, you're going to have these things. Specifically on TV writing. Right now, I have some videos here.
So I've talked a lot about writing a screenplay.
Let me share this. I've got like a mini few video playlist that I'll link to you here that I would recommend watching. I'll also link this in the YouTube chat as well. These videos are a little bit old, which I don't love, but I think they're a decent place to start. There's also a video I did.
So I've talked a lot about writing a screenplay for a feature-length film, and now
I did this video fairly recently, this how to build a cliffhanger video that was from a previous live stream of mine. So let's think. And in this, I'm breaking down the structure of the pilot episode of Breaking Bad and how it flows into the second episode, and thinking about how your TV show structure flows. And so this is also an excellent video to take a look at for that. We can actually take a look at it now if you'd prefer.
Yeah, I don't mind. But now I got like a question, because like the idea of series that I'm thinking, I think is different than the usual series or shows you would think about. Which I got the name, like the Across the Generations. It's like a series that every episode is about, like one episode about entertainment, another is a sports, like how the people lives were over generations. So like maybe every episode will have like 5 sketches, every sketch is about generation. So I think that would be like a different also way for the scripts and the story circle that I just learned today from you too.
Yeah, it sounds pretty complicated. This would be your first project?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can definitely attempt that. I'm just going to be honest with you that it sounds very complicated to me at first glance. And what I found is if you're a new writer and you're trying to write something in the beginning, we writers have a natural tendency to write something super unique, original, and complicated in the very beginning. But I think that is usually not what will best serve you. If you want to pound a version of that out, you totally can. So are you trying to do an anthology where you're following different characters every episode, or you're trying to do sketches within the same episode?
No, like one episode, for example, like the first episode is about entertainment, like how different people over generations had were entertained. Like the first sketch is about people in 70s, the other sketch is about people in 80s. So yeah, like different sketches in one episode with different people probably.
Okay.
Or maybe like the same characters, but they are like placed in different generations.
Okay. So you're looking at essentially different themes, and then doing sketches for those different themes in each episode. Yeah, I mean, I would, write a version of that. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't take a shot. I think what you're then building is, if you can see my screen here, I'm going to draw
I can.
things for you here. What you're building is, if we've got like episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. So then we might have like, how many of these skits are you wanting per episode?
Probably like 5, like only the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the 2000 and 2010s, because we are just like in the 20s generation.
Okay, so you're gonna do kind of 5 skits per episode?
Yeah.
How long are you wanting the skits to be, like time-wise, do you know? Like how many pages?
If like because like I live in the Middle East, like every episode is probably 40 minutes, so maybe 8 minutes, let's say.
Okay.
To be like,
each sketch is 8 minutes long. Okay.
Yeah, kinda.
Gotcha. So these are gonna be, you said 40-minute episodes is what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
because that's the usual in the Middle East, you know,
Okay.
in
So,
the Syrian drama.
okay. That's usual in the Middle East? What do you mean?
Like in the because like I live in Turkey, but I am half Lebanese, half Syrian. So in the Syrian drama, which the series is kinda dramatic experience and documentary storytelling. That's what I searched and found.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why 40 minutes I think is the best per episode.
Okay. Well, here's what I'll say, right? Like you can definitely try this format. It's definitely a bit more complicated, but hey, if you're attracted to it, I don't see any reason you can't take a shot at this here. So, let me just think about like one skit you're thinking is going to be around, you said like 8 pages?
8 minutes. I don't know if the page will be 1 minute.
Usually that's how it works. 1 minute per page is how it usually averages out. So I'm just going to say
Oh,
around 8 pages, 8 minutes.
okay.
So in that sense, you are going to have, each of these are going to be very small stories, right? And you're,
Yeah, it's like how people were in those generations in that specific idea.
mhm. So you're probably going to have essentially like this section of the story of each one is probably going to be around 6 pages. And then you're going to have a climax that takes us through the second half in probably around 2 pages. And ideally for each of these little skits, you have at least 4 characters involved. And then we're going to be
Yeah.
making important choices in those scenes. And specifically choices here. So yeah, I mean, you can take a shot at that for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Uh, if you will, what was it called? Break down that video that you showed me right now. I will still be ready right now. So
Yeah, I can.
whatever you want.
I can take a look at that. It's definitely going to be different from what you're trying to write. I'll
Yeah, of course. But like to take a small idea.
totally,
That's the idea.
totally. Yeah, let's take a look
Yeah.
at the video here.
All right. So I'm just gonna leave the stage and
Perfect.
I'm gonna stay.
So let's think about
Hey,
an episode
thanks.
of a television
Yeah,
show.
absolutely. Yeah, let's take a look at this clip from fairly. This was how long ago? 8 months ago. My goodness. I've not been on YouTube that much. Oh man. All right. Let's take a look at this cliffhangers video. Because I have noticed that people who are writing TV shows, very many times, they don't have a sense of like episode structure. I noticed that episodes sort of blend together into this big soup rather than having clarity on the story of this episode and how that story of that episode builds into the next one. So we're going to take a look at this video here. Let me see if I can, let's do this. See if I can share with audio. 1 second, maybe later. Clipping, let's see. Okay. Yeah, sorry Discord. I'm not quite sure why I can't get audio from the videos to you guys. I will have to troubleshoot that off stream. But let's take a look at this video here. So let's think about an episode of a television show. Okay. In this episode of a television show, the most basic way of sending the story, or sending your character through that story, is like so. Okay? Character has a goal. They encounter a problem, make a choice, and take an action to solve that problem. They get the goal in some way. Pay for getting the goal, right? And again, this is structural. Pay for getting the goal. And then essentially this is a huge problem, right? This 6 is a huge problem. This is what creates ultimately our climactic beat that happens here. Okay? The 7 is our climactic beat. This is where the climax happens, where your character where they make a pivotal choice and end the conflict of the episode. And then now the story world is changed. Now, with this, how do we actually create a cliffhanger, and what does that look like? So there's a difference between a mini story of an episode cliffhanger and then a larger series or season cliffhanger, because we're leading into the next episode, okay? So each of your episodes should be their own full story. Like, you don't want to make the episode fully. I mean, you can make the episode a cliffhanger if you want. There's essentially 2 ways to do this, okay? So if you want to make your episodes super cliffhangery, where every single time you interrupt what's going on and you don't give the audience their cathartic climax, then what you do is you chop your story here. You have your character, they have a goal, they encounter a problem, encounter an initial problem, right? This is your inciting incident. They make a choice or take an action to get over that inciting incident, get their goal in some way, pay for it wildly, cut to black, right? No climactic beat, no final action from the character to handle that problem. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is, if you look at Breaking Bad and the Breaking Bad pilot, how that works is we have Walter. He wants to make money for his family. The initial problem is he gets cancer diagnosis. This is what forces him into action. So then he seeks out Jesse Pinkman to cook meth. Right? And they're going to sell this meth to make money for his family. That's how he's saying what he's doing, right? He gets the goal, cooks a batch of meth to sell. I'm going to pause here for a moment. Notice that a lot of the story is taking place in this 4, right? So the circle, when you're kind of going through it, this half is usually longer than this half, right? Because the setup takes more time. The pacing increases when we go into the climax, right? Notice how this is clear progress for this, okay? What happens now is he pays for it. What happens? The drug dealers, Jesse's friends, right? And this is kind of also where setups and payoffs come in. We introduced these drug dealers earlier on in the story. Drug dealers come to kill them and take their meth, right? And this is important because it's also showing this character, Walt, who is this regular guy, a huge problem. What it's actually going to take to do this, right? To cook and sell meth to make money for his family, it's going to take more than he realizes. And that's a big way that you can think about the 6, right? The 6 is that your character is realizing whatever they wanted or whatever they're trying to do is going to take a lot more effort and a lot more personal growth than they realized. So then what happens in the story? The story does not cliffhanger us in the sense that it stops there. It gives us our climactic beat. What happens? Okay. So what happens in Breaking Bad is Walter attempts to kill the men, to kill the drug dealers. Okay. Now, this is huge, and this seems like a basic sort of external beat, but it is not. this is a choice, right? So Walter is making a choice here. He is seeing that it's going to take way more than he thought. Like, it's not just about cooking a little bit of meth, right? Actually, drug dealers are going to come kill him as he's making this. Therefore, he must make the choice to kill them, right? So we took this character from the beginning who is a regular chemistry teacher at high school, and because of this huge problem, now he has the opportunity to make a choice that changes who he is, right? Because he specifically has this problem that presents itself, this unexpected problem that presents itself, now allows your character to go through growth, okay? So, continuing this back on cliffhangers, right? The story ends where Walter, the change is Walter, according to, as far as he knows, has now, has now become a killer. Right? That's the change. And this happens, like, we have our climactic beat, right? He locks them up in the RV, shuts the door, they freak out. It seems like they're dead. I believe one of them dies and one of them doesn't. Spoiler. But you don't learn about that until episode 2, and that's very, very important because we solve the immediate conflict for the episode in this climactic beat, right? But we still have a long way to go to get this goal, but we solve the immediate conflict for the episode in the episode. So the story at large is still happening. Walter still has to figure out what to do with these drug dealer bodies. He's still in the world of cooking meth. None of that is resolved. What is resolved is the immediate conflict, the present conflict. What is the present conflict? It is the drug dealers that have come to kill him. We have solved the conflict of this episode. What was the specific conflict of this episode? The drug dealers came to kill him. This creates our climactic beat. He solves that. Now the story sends us into episode 2. Okay? And in episode 2 starts with what to do with the bodies. Right? This is now the question that started us up. So our conflict is back to a low point, right? We're no longer in this climactic beat, and we're not starting episode 2 at some climactic beat. We're starting episode 2 at the beginning of a new story, right? So now, okay, what to do with the bodies? Well, then he goes to R2 again, right? He wants to burn them with acid, right? Because he's a chemistry teacher, he understands how to break down a body. So he wants to break down he wants to burn the bodies with acid or dissolve them in acid, right? Then we get our new problem, right? Remember from the problem here, what's the new problem? This is what I was just talking about. One of the drug dealers is alive. Ooh. So what does he do? He takes a new action. He locks the dealer in the basement with a bike lock around his neck. Pretty intense, right? Gets it with a bike lock around his neck. He's locking this guy in. And so then now essentially here, like, he still hasn't decided what to do, but now, the drug dealer is now detained, essentially, right? He is kidnapped at this point. And then we get the 6. Now this is where the drug dealer tries to appeal to Walter, being this character from the very beginning. Hey, you're a regular guy. You're a chemistry teacher, right? You don't have to kill me. Like, we can all just
Say it's okay. I'll go my way, you go yours. It's all good. You're not this guy. You're not a killer. That's what this drug dealer is telling to him, right? But then, and that's part of it here. Of like, now that he's kidnapped, now the drug dealer is making his case. He's making his case for why he should live, essentially, right? He makes his case for why he should live. So then, now, again, we're back to our 7, right? Also, I think the drug dealer tries to kill Walter is the better way to think about the 6. I don't know if I update that in this video, but the drug dealer appeals first. He first makes the case for why he should live, and then he tries to kill Walter. And that is the real moment of immediate conflict that forces an immediate action from Walter, and that immediacy is what creates a climactic moment. What's happening? Our climactic beat, our pivotal choice. Drug dealer, I'm going to call DD, tries to kill Walter. Yeah, so this is really the 6. So and what is the... These 2 beats happen together. Right, he makes a case, the drug dealer tries to kill him, which is the pivotal problem, and now Walter has a choice. Choice that Walter makes. Walter kills. Walter kills a man in cold blood. So notice the progression here. Right? Notice the progression that's taking place, just to separate this. Notice the progression that's taking place in episode 2 than what we saw here. In the first episode of Breaking Bad, we watch Walter have to try and kill people that are actively trying to kill him. Right? So the first go of this is you could say, oh, well, he kills the first drug dealer in self-defense, right? But now, in episode 2, he's killing a man that he has kidnapped. He's killing him in cold blood, right? We're watching his descent here, right, into this new world, into the darkness of the business and the empire that ultimately will be created by Heisenberg. That's what we're seeing here. Notice how the story is creating these mini stories that ultimately are doing what? At the end of every story, there is a what? The 8. The 8 is the change. What has changed? What is changed in the story at the end here? In this sequence, right? In this one episode, Walter has now become a killer. What is the change in episode 2? Walter has now killed a man in cold blood. And the more that you can do that, and layer on these flows of character arc and drama and going forward, that is so much more powerful than having some cliffhanger ending right here that cuts off the climactic beat and the fundamental change from each of your episodes, right? It's much... Yes, because change comes through choices. And if you do not give your character the ability to choose to make a decision at the end, then you do not have a real arc and you do not have a climax. You just have a problem that has arisen. Why am I offline? What? What if you were online, though? Okay. I see a couple questions in the Discord. We're going to go to the next one here. What's up, man? What's your question today?
What's up, Tyler?
What's up, dude?
Good to meet you, dude.
Nice to meet you.
I've been loving your videos. And and I just had a couple of questions involving my script.
Yeah, of course. Shoot.
All right, awesome. Is it okay if I send you a Miro link?
Yeah.
Okay. Sick.
Yeah, as long as everything you've got is safe for streaming and not going to get me in trouble with the YouTube overlords, you can send me whatever you need.
Yeah, it's all good. Here. Let me know if that works. So like, I've been trying to create scenes for my story. I've really just been like applying your methods, and I think I came up with a good way to create a scene that's helpful to me, but I was wondering what you thought about it.
Okay.
If I'm like on the right track.
Yeah, give me 1 second here. I need to get into this. I think we're in. All right.
All right. Nice.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, walk me through what I'm looking at here.
Okay. So basically what I've been doing is like for each scene, I have like stakes on both sides. Like the fundamentals of the story. So like choice, stakes, and then all under the two viewpoints. And I think this like works for all types of scenes, like external stakes, internal stakes, and philosophical stakes right here. And when I watched your, trying to explain this a little bit. You're really good at explaining stuff. It's a hard job, but
I appreciate that.
I watched your practical screenwriting course, and you said like there's different types of scenes, and pivotal ones usually have all three types of stakes in them. And so I put the stakes here, but you also said like some are just external, some can be a combination of external, internal.
What's going to happen is, I think in a good moment of choice, all three of the stakes here are tied to one single choice, right? Where there's not like multiple choices. There's just the choice that we have in front of us affects us on all three of our stake levels, right? So, you know, when Frodo is holding the ring of power over Mount Doom, right? This is an external choice, throw ring or not, but it's also an internal choice. Will Frodo actually let it go? And it's a philosophical choice, right? Is he going to be consumed by this evil, or will good ultimately win in the end? And so you have all three of your levels of stakes involved in one single choice.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is like how to practically apply that. My method would be like right now, I'm like choosing, so I have the two viewpoints. I decide like the want for the scene based on like the character's viewpoint. So if they like believe something, that changes what they want.
What's the story you're working on?
Sorry, what did you say?
What's the story that you're working
on? It's a sci-fi film. It's about like this kid who experiences bullying, and learns to be an upstander. And I'm sort of taking the approach of like of District 9 and trying to like incorporate a sci-fi element into it, and have concepts that like parallel to the real world, but still at the core of the story it's like bully versus upstander.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you have written for it so far? Like, do you have any scenes written out that we could take a look at?
They're pretty rough. Yeah, I could probably pull something up though. Let me see. What do you think of this approach to like writing scenes?
in the sense of kind of having the two sides have their want, mistakes, internal, external philosophical conflict, this sort of thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's all your teachings, but
yeah, I mean, I think this is fairly on the right track. We have the two sides. We have wants on both sides. Now, what will happen here is you kind of have one fundamental choice here that both sides are debating against, right? And so then we have essentially two options, right? We have kind of option 2, option 1 over here. And then I can also give you this, which is just directly from my choices YouTube video. But this is how I'm looking at scenes right now. Like when I'm actually trying to break down a scene, it's going to look exactly like this. And I'll pop this into your document here.
Thank you.
So here we've got essentially who wants what in the scene, right? We establish our character wants, which you have here, right? Want. This is correct. We're going to have two sides of the want. Who wants want in the scene, and then who's in their way. Essentially, what is the opposing want? And then you have a scene object. What is the important object the debate is over? Not every scene will have one, but it is definitely important to think about it. And then you have one single choice that's presented, and then we essentially have two sides of that choice that are now being debated, right? So we have kind of the viewpoint 1 side and the viewpoint 2 side, side A versus side B. Yeah. Now all the characters in the scene are going to have some level of an opinion on what they think should be done, whether A or B. And then who has the power of the choice. So this is a key point where it's going to be one character's decision fundamentally, right? Like what you find both in real life and in story is that one character ends up holding the decision, right? And other, just as is the nature of the decision in front of them, right? Like if a guy asks a girl, will you marry me? It is no other person's decision in the world except that girl's, whether she says yes or no, right? And so then in that sense, someone has the power of the choice. Or in like Succession, I don't know if you've seen the show Succession, but in my Scene Choices YouTube video, we've got Logan Roy, who's the big billionaire magnate, and there's this question of, are they going to let the FBI raid them, right? The FBI is out front. They want to raid this business and like go through all his files. The question is, are they going to let him in? And so he has the decision-making power to whether or not he will let them in. And then stakes raise, essentially how is pressure built on the choice? How are you making that choice? We have to answer that choice right now. And then finally, what option is chosen? So I like what you have here. I think you're on the right track. I think also using this kind of just sense of the line of what's happening in your scene hopefully is helpful to you as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So for scene object, I guess, what would be a practical way to create something like that?
Totally. So we can come to a great example from my favorite YouTube channel, youtube.com/Tyler Mowery. So in this,
my favorite as well.
Heck yeah. So in this video here, okay.
Yeah, I love this.
When we're looking at scene objects, right, they are going to be an expression of your story world and an expression of the actual choice that's happening in front of us. So here,
this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill.
Right, so the scene object is very, very obvious here, right? Scene object is the blue pill and the red pill. It comes from the world of the Matrix, right, as part of the concept of the Matrix. And then at the same time, it is also expressing the choice that is in front of us. And so one of the things about scene objects is that scene objects are part of the reason that a scene can feel iconic, right, or really eye-catching is, you know, this scene is just a guy holding pills in his hands, right? Like, you could do this very easily without Hollywood actors and $1 million budget. It's a guy, two men sitting in a room, one of them is holding pills in his hands. Yet, it is one of the most iconic scenes from the entire movie. Why? Because this is a well thought out and well crafted scene object that is given weight and power in the story. Same sort of thing here.
Eat the ice cream or not.
You have
Now the dialogue.
You have this question about Olive and Little Miss Sunshine, this little girl. The family is going to a beauty pageant, and now she orders ice cream. So now we have this debate about, should she eat this ice cream when she's trying to go compete in a beauty pageant, right? And so then, again, the scene object is set in the world, and also notice that the entire setting of the scene all is serving this scene object, right? They're in a diner here. They're in a place where she can specifically order ice cream for breakfast, right? So this scene can't take place in their house. It can't take place in the car. It can't take place anywhere else. The scene object sort of ties the scene's conflict to a specific location as well. That's also why you get this idea of like set pieces or settings where conflict can take place, is where, certain places have certain important objects that only exist in that place. Therefore, it is the backdrop for this choice that is happening.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I guess just quick. Oh, am I?
Just a touch.
Okay, like I guess just before I go, if I were to tie that into like in here, on Miro, would it be like, so I have the line above is the viewpoint 1 and viewpoint 2 in terms of concept design, and the line below is viewpoint 1 and viewpoint 2 in terms of character design.
Okay.
So like I would put like, let's just say the red pill, what would you say are the two like points in the Matrix, like accepting reality? Or?
Yeah, the two viewpoints in the Matrix is essentially like accepting the system of the Matrix, accepting the lie of the Matrix versus seeking the truth of the real world. And so in this, it would be, let's say viewpoint 1 is accepting the lie of the Matrix. And then viewpoint 2 is seeking the truth of the real world. Kind of have these ideas here, and these could be more and more clarified in regards to the Matrix. There's a lot of ways to look at it, but yes, it would essentially be the red pill is representative of seeking the truth of the real world. The blue pill is representative of accepting the lie of the Matrix. Now, in that scene in particular, you have two different objects that are kind of the same thing that are then representing these two different sides. And then in the case of like the ice cream, right, this is essentially just showing like one viewpoint, and then we have whether or not to eat that one object becomes the debate, right? So you have so it works the same. It's just you don't have it's not like ice cream or celery. It's just the ice cream itself.
Okay, very cool. So I guess then, like, because in those scenes, there's also like, those are hitting multiple conflicts, right? That's like external, but also there's the internal. I guess in Little Miss Sunshine, there's like the character dynamics there, and so that's why I did like a line character. And I just, this is where I'm getting a little lost on how, like, you can have those working together at the same time.
Totally.
These are like the characters, the purple things.
So I would adjust this a little bit.
Those were one or opposition.
I would adjust this a little bit and say that rather than expressing your characters on this line in this way, I would say there's more of like a vertical line where we got viewpoint 1, viewpoint 2, and in the case of the specific scene, we have characters that are simply on one side or the other. So they exist over here, or they exist over here, Now they debate back and forth, and we get to a choice in the end. So if you're thinking about this from the scene level, right, like here, it's literally, will Olive eat the ice cream? Yes, no, right? And so then, like, the characters themselves, if you're expressing your, like, where your characters are in the larger web, then I think that's best to look at that through, like, a quadrant grid like this, right, where you have, or I'll just show you in my framework, where you have this kind of thing here, where it's like, okay, we have our characters that are on one side of the viewpoint or the other, and then they sort of exist in these kind of different quadrants based on how we're seeing them this way. In this case, in a scene, it's going to be one binary choice, right? It's going to be yes or no, and then the characters might exist in different points in the web, but once we're actually at the scene level, it's binary, one or the other, right? We have it's either yes or it's no. And that clarity is what makes the scene work. And then in this case, then you can discuss, okay, how are the actual character dynamics coming forward in the scene to express this choice? And this is really where your understanding and knowledge of how people interact and how they make choices as a unit come into play, right? So this particular scene that I expressed in this video starts with Olive versus her father, then Cheryl, her mother, jumps in, and it starts with these three characters over here, and then Olive opens it to the other part of the table. Grandpa speaks first, and then brings in these other two characters. And so there's like this almost hierarchical flow of how this decision is made about something that seemingly seems unimportant, but in reality it is important because it is an expression of what the characters believe. So then you can kind of think about it like the parents and Olive, like her father is kind of, let's say, at the top of the hierarchy.
A real shot is like split through the middle.
Totally. Yeah.
It's like showing like what position she's in the middle, and then father and grandpa are on opposite sides.
Totally. Absolutely.
Obviously. Guess where you said like it shifts position from one viewpoint to the other, like throughout the scene. If we go to the Mira, in terms of like what I wrote on this little circle here, like starts off with like the want, and like, and she makes a choice to get the ice cream. She orders it, but then like the stakes come in here. Are you seeing my cursor, by the way, on the? Okay, yeah. So like the stakes come in here, but then like something, I think the father says something. The truth. In the whole story. Then the stakes come in.
Okay, so you're building this like a circle. I see. Yeah. So kind of what happens in that scene in particular is she has her want. She acts towards the want initially to, I want the ice cream. So boom, I want ice cream. Now the ice cream is coming. Now we have the debate about what she's going to do. And then, yeah, I would say at the middle, specifically in this scene, at the middle, when she comes, when the ice cream actually comes here, she does not want it at first. They think is right. In this scene, Olive has the power. It's her to take their side, but it's still her decision. Stakes raise, the ice cream arrives.
A la Mowery, right? I'll be back with your waffles in a sec.
Now it's time. What will Olive do?
Does anyone want my ice cream?
Richard wins.
So right now, she ends up being on the side of no. I'm not going to eat my ice cream now because my father has influenced me. But then we have a stronger influence from the other side that then overturns her choice.
In this moment, Olive has made a choice in one direction. Richard feels satisfied that his worldview has won out. But this is where the other characters in the scene come into play. As Olive chooses not to eat her ice cream, the other characters choose a side by taking action.
Yeah, I like a little. Dwayne, Frank, Olive's not gonna have her ice cream.
Yeah, do you mind if I have a little
Yeah,
bit?
let's dig in.
All the characters in the scene are now involved. With all the characters involved,
And that's also kind of where your stakes raise comes in. Like, this is how you can think about how the stakes are raised. The stakes raise is not like some ethereal thing that's happening in the background. It's a particular moment where pressure is built on your choice, right? So in this scene, the pressure is built on the choice by the other characters pressuring Olive to eat her ice cream, right? So now that she's chosen her father's view, and also like that's the other piece of the stakes raise, is that Olive has for this moment chosen her father's view, raising the stakes and forcing the other characters to react against that. Now Olive is back in the decision, right?
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. I can have the last question would be like, you said there's two types, or there's like the three conflicts, philosophical, internal, and external. Like, how would those come into play, I guess? Like, because internal, how characters challenge your protagonist, like, because they have like a connection to them.
So
really know how to like play that out, I guess.
Totally.
Just have to, I don't know.
So first and foremost, especially when we're working within the medium of making films, and we're doing visual storytelling where we're not going to show character thought, the internal conflict is simply Olive's indecision here, right? Like, she is in internal conflict right now, right? You can look at her face.
makes her final choice.
So they are all kind of taunting her about her choice. That is their and I would also say there's almost it may even be better to think of this as like external is literally like eat the ice cream or not, and then we have internal conflict is really just the dilemma about the choice. I think like that is just always kind of there. When you have a choice, there's always internal conflict. I think it's many times better to think about it as emotional stakes, where part of the reason that she sides with her father is because she wants her father's approval. She wants her father to love her, right? And so then there's this emotional or character relationship level of the stakes that comes involved. And then finally you have your philosophical or your belief layer. And so to me, like, yes, internal conflict exists. Yes, it is real. Yes, it is important. All of these things. When you are trying to express a scene, however, I think it is much better to think about it as external, emotional, because emotional is still external on the level of it matters what these characters think to Olive, right? It matters what her dad thinks. It matters what her mom thinks. It matters what grandpa thinks. So then we have this emotional or character relationship level that is also somewhat tied to the philosophical stakes, but it is also its own thing, right? Because even though Olive wants to eat her ice cream, however, so philosophically, Olive is in a position in the scene where she wants to eat her ice cream. However, her decision is momentarily overturned because of the emotional stakes in the scene. She cares what her father thinks of her. She wants to have the approval and the validation of her father. And because of that, she makes a decision from the emotional level rather than from the belief level in this moment.
Okay. All right. That's great. I really hate it. Tyler, yeah, this has been great.
Perfect, man. Thanks
Maybe
for
this
coming on
helps
today.
someone else. Yeah. Great to meet you.
Yeah, dude. Great to meet you as well. What was your name?
Ben.
What was it?
Ben.
Ben?
Or Fin.
Fin. Finn. Perfect. Nice
Yeah.
to meet you, Finn. Cool.
Nice to meet you, man.
Thanks for bringing this forward today.
Thank you so much.
Totally.
Yeah. Thank you. All right.
All right. I am going to let me check up with the YouTube chat here. And then Jason, I'm going to have you speak next. Let me just catch up quickly with our lovely YouTube chat. Zave16 says, does every scene require a scene object of some kind? Good question. The short answer is no. Every scene does not require a scene object. However, having a scene object can really enhance the scene and also make the scene more memorable, right? So like imagine the Matrix blue pill, red pill scene without the pills, right? The scene is wildly less interesting. It's wildly less interesting to film. It's less interesting to write. It's less interesting for the actors. It gives them less to do. So your story becomes more interesting and more dynamic based on how much the room that the characters are in feels real and meaningful and important. And a lot of that comes down to having a scene object in that scene that is giving the scene that meaning. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. I mentioned this scene in Succession.
The family. What if we take a character...
And this scene has no scene object. I'm going to let this scene play because I think this is a good piece of this video to remind you guys. But this scene has no scene object, and it doesn't need one, and it works without one, but it is also very good to have one.
With some real decision-making power and pressure them.
The FBI is downstairs.
What?
This is Succession.
Tell me the f off.
Yeah, these are the ones who don't f off. This is a search warrant.
What do they do at the front desk?
What are we doing? They're at the gates. Can we call Southern District? Get Leo! Get!
Logan has the power of choice in this scene, and he sits at the top of the hierarchy in the company. Because of this, notice how all the other characters are against Logan. Every other character wants him to cooperate, and they all matter for the debate. Even if a character says nothing, they are taking a side. We see their point of view through their body language. And all of this signals, 1, where they are in the hierarchy, and 2, what side they fall under in the present choice. Notice that only Jerry, the president of the company, speaks plainly to Logan.
Apparently there's about 20 of them down there.
Why don't we just ask them if they can come back tomorrow?
Logan, they are coming up. And if you don't open the door, they will kick it in. And if you don't open the filing cabinet, they will pull out a crowbar. This is a show of resolve. And there are cameras outside, and they do not need to see the FBI meeting any resistance.
What do we say?
Cooperate. Open up. Let them in.
Great scene, no scene object. But very, very, very clear choice. And notice all these characters against Logan. I think that's really, really fun. All right, let me bring in Jason here. Where's the request? There it is. What's up, Jason?
Hello again.
How are you?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm doing great as well. What's your question today?
Well, do you remember how yesterday you and I, we did that whole story circle thing?
Yes.
For my project?
Yes.
Well, this morning I did that, but I think I messed up. And I think I realized that when you were showing the cliffhanger clip earlier, so yeah. Can I just share what I have so far?
Of course.
Okay. All right, so you mentioned last time how the cat getting run over was the inciting incident for Adam to socialize more, right?
Yes.
All right, so you also mentioned there, like, you mentioned something about a vague event. Like, what was it you said about the event?
Oh yeah, so I said that if we have the situation where the inciting incident is that his cat dies, And
Mhm.
then he realizes, okay, I need to go out and find new friends, right? Because my one friend is now gone. Then
Yeah.
I think there needs to be some sort of like event or place we go where there's going to be a lot of people there, and it's like a place this person could meet friends. And then
Got
at
it.
that place, he meets somebody or has something happen to him that ends up giving him the superpowers that you were talking about.
Exactly. Well, I figured out what the event would be. I figured out it would be a carnival.
Okay.
Good thing this carnival happened at the exact same time as the, unfortunate death of the cat.
Mm-hmm.
What a coincidence. Anyways,
Well, life is meaningful. There are all sorts of meaningful things like this that happen. But continue.
right. So, anyways, Adam. I didn't write this in the circle itself, but I personally know that Adam is going to refuse to go to the carnival several times until the cat dies, and then he's going to give heavy consideration before ultimately deciding to go.
Okay.
So he goes to the carnival, and he's really nervous to be there because he's asocial.
Mm-hmm.
And he eventually meets up with, like, his ultimate goal is to find friends and be social, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll have him meet a group of veterinarians, like a group of friends,
Mm-hmm.
at this veterinarian booth, and because of Adam's love for animals, he and the group, they pretty much connect, and they befriend each other. So essentially, Adam gets what he wants, but now he has to pay a heavy price for it. And I think I got this mixed up with the climax. So
Yeah, so I think that him meeting these people is your 5. That's your halfway point. And then something needs to go kind of crazy, off the wall, wrong, and he ends up with these powers that you're talking about. And maybe also he has to like immediately use them or something like this, but we essentially need a climax where we end this story where he has his new powers.
Right.
It also feels like there's almost this theme of animals coming through, right? We have the cat, and then your next idea was kind of about meeting veterinarians. So maybe you also keep whatever his powers are within that theme as well.
That's exactly what I was intending to do. Elemental powers are cliche, non-animal powers. So just blend them.
Sure, yeah.
Well, not blend them, but mash them. So anyways, yeah, I think I got messed up, but I'll tell you what I wrote down. So I know I would establish earlier in the story that Adam has 2 bullies, which, hate his guts because I don't know why. I need to figure that out, but they don't like him. They like to make fun of him. So they decide to do this prank by taking this chemical compound. I don't know what's in it, but it's a chemical compound that somehow gives superpowers, and they decide to, dump it all over him because they think it's some kind of bleach or something.
Okay.
Bleach is very funny to bullies. Yeah. So anyway, as Adam goes into the restroom, they prepare it. They don't have a bucket with them. They don't pull a string to douse it all over like that one scene in Carrie, but they just wait outside and then have a beaker, dump it on him. It burns. And then he falls unconscious and is transported to the hospital. And this is where I think I got mixed up with the 6 and the 7, because I feel like what I described to you should be the 7.
So they dumped this on him. I think that's our 6, right? They dumped this on him, something like this. He should take, I think, some sort of immediate action in that moment, right? Now, that action could be he chooses to run away, right? He chooses to run away from the bullies. It could also be that he chooses to fight back against them or something like this. But we need to see what his choice is here, right? Who is this character? We understand who he is based on what choice he makes after the problem. So they've dumped this sort of compound on him or this bleach on him, and then what does he do about that?
That's the thing. I didn't write anything about that, but that's okay.
Yeah,
that's
totally
fine.
Okay. That is the next point that you need to think about.
Yes. And so, yeah. And yeah, I do realize I do have to show him having powers. But did I tell you that this was going to be a series or a movie?
I think you said it's a series.
Yeah, it's going to be a series. I feel like this will be a decent enough pilot episode because I think it raises a lot of questions. But yeah, thank you for that. But yeah, I'll think of a choice because I know Adam is going to end up in the hospital for that, and he's going to be told that he survived. In fact, I think I'm going to do that one trick in medias res. I don't know why, but I kind of like it. Where it starts in the middle, like there's a cold open in the middle, and then we go back to the beginning to see how we got to that point.
You can do that. Sometimes I feel like that's it can be cheap. I would think it would be very interesting for the open maybe to have something to do with these animal-based superpowers on some level, where we are setting up a certain audience expectation for the type of story that they're about to experience. And then you could do that in a way where it is in the timeline, right? Like it actually does take place in the beginning, kind of before we get started. That's another way that you could think about it. But I really like, it can work both ways. There's a lot of teasers that kind of start halfway through or at the end, and then we kind of build up to that point. So it's really up to you.
Right. Okay. Because, yeah, and thank you for noticing the whole animal motif. That's going to be a huge part of this.
Perfect.
Animals. So I'm trying to think of another question I had, but what should happen after the climax? Like, the climax would be Adam taking action against him, getting a chemical compound sprayed on him. So, what should happen?
Yeah, I think your 8, sort of your final change. I think you said like either he ends up in the hospital or he collapses somewhere, like he doesn't make it to the hospital or something like this. I think we should the end is going to be he's kind of down and out, right? He's been hit with this. He's made some sort of initial action while he's hyped up on adrenaline, and then he kind of collapses somewhere, right? I think we don't even need to see the full transformation yet. He just has this happen to him, and then episode 2 starts where he either wakes up in the hospital or he wakes up outside the carnival, like he didn't make it home. He tried to go home and he just, that would also be kind of fun, is rather than it just being a hospital, he wakes up in the area or like maybe somewhere in the carnival and it's like now it's closed, there's only like janitors around and it's just him and he sort of feels weird or he looks strange or something like this.
Wow.
And now he has to go from there.
No, yeah. Honestly, that second scene reminds me of I know it kind of reminds me of the scene where Harry Potter finds himself in the burned down carnival, and I don't know which movie it was. I think it was either Goblet of Fire or the movie that came after that one. But it kind of reminds me a lot of that.
Yeah.
But that's actually genius, honestly.
I think going with something like that could be very good.
Because honestly, I was just...
Go
ahead.
Well, I'm trying. My one big thing I like to do is try to get away from ideas that we see over and over again. So like one thing I notice a lot is the idea of the first thought or the first idea, right? That every time you're working on a story beat or a story idea, there's usually going to be some sort of first thought, right? First immediate instinct. Oh, clearly he should go to the hospital. It's like, okay, that's the first idea. But I think if we keep pushing a little further, we might be able to find something that connects us more to our story world and can be a little bit more interesting for this story, which is why I was suggesting that he wakes up in the carnival after this crazy carnival night.
Yeah, honestly, that would make for one heck of a two-parter.
For sure.
Well, one heck of a cliffhanger. The second part obviously has to be as good as the first. But yeah, that would be an amazing cliffhanger. But yeah. But because my initial ending was just going to be pretty generic, if I'm going to be honest. So
Right.
I'm really happy you suggested that.
Perfect.
So yeah, it was just going to be him in the hospital, trying to remember what happened. And then he goes home and yeah, the audience is sleeping. So I'm going to change it.
Cool. Yeah, man, I really like the beginning of this idea. I would love to see if you threw down kind of a story circle written out for it and bring that forward. And yeah, I'd love to see more on how you're seeing the end of this play out. Thanks for bringing your story forward.
Of course. Thank you for letting me.
For sure. All right. I think there was one final question. I saw a question from Joseph earlier on that I wanted to circle back to. Okay. So this was a question from Joseph in the Discord. How to, from idea to film-worthy idea. When is an idea for a story big enough to warrant a script treatment? What are some signposts you use to judge an idea become interesting enough to merit a screenplay treatment? Is it just the full accompaniment of complete beats that you spoke of with Stevenson? That's a good question. So this is kind of about, so specifically creating a film-worthy idea, something that is big enough to merit a screenplay. I think a lot of times it's strange because screenplays can house huge ideas like intergalactic fights all the way to smaller ideas like, in personal dramas. I think a lot of it comes down to, do we actually have a story, like amount of characters I think is huge. Do we actually have enough story to fill 4 acts, or is this more of a short story? Those are some of the bigger questions. But I also feel like every idea can be morphed into an idea that is big enough or film worthy or this sort of thing, right? Like, I don't think there's that much kind of cut and dry. This is a film worthy idea, this is not. Or like, you can take an idea that is very, very basic and small and not very well developed and develop it out into a full feature idea. So a lot of the times I see ideas that are half thought out, or we've got 3 characters when we really need a character web of 8, or we have a story that really only fills a couple of acts, and now we need to say, okay, are we going to extend this story forward, or are we going to add more into what we already have and keep our climax, the climax that it is? So that's usually what I found. I really believe that any idea can be morphed and grown into what you want it to become. You just have to understand what are you trying to build, and that's important for understanding medium. If you're going to tell a feature-length story, then that comes with certain requirements. It needs to be a story that is interesting visually, ideally that has enough characters for the story to remain interesting, and that we have actually enough plot to fill at least a 2-hour time frame, right? Where if you have 20 minutes of plot that you're trying to fill into a 2-hour movie, that's not going to work. So, and I think you feel that out more and more the more you work on stories, and that's also one of the reasons I like story circles as my act structure, because I can say, okay, I know if I make 4 complete circles, movements of drama, it's very easy for each of these to be around 25 pages, right? And now I've got something that's going to feel like a complete screenplay. Yes, it's all about, Joseph replied, that's clear. The difference is developing, expanding, and deepening the initial idea following basic criteria of cinema. Yes. A lot of what it is yes, just deepening the idea. This is also why I encourage writers to stick with one idea, because it's not about, like, when you go to a new idea, it's going to be surface level again, right? Like, to put this like in another context, if you're in a relationship with someone and you're like, oh, they're awful, they're this, they're that, I'm going to break this relationship off. It's like, they might be those things, but if you're in a relationship with somebody for 5 years or 10 years or however long, there is just an absolute wealth of personal experience and personal understanding that only comes from time and only comes from that natural development of that relationship with that person. And then if you start from scratch, you start from scratch, right? You're asking somebody on a date what their favorite color again is, and it's just, you are back to surface level. You can think about that in the same way of your story, where if you spend a ton of time deepening an idea, understanding your characters, writing a draft, rewriting that draft, going back to square one, adding set pieces, all these things, you just have more thought done in that idea. You have more to choose from and pick from to deepen that idea. And so when writers come to work with me one-on-one, I've noticed that we are able to work the fastest when they come with at least a draft, or they come with a lot of work previously done, because it gives us this whole palette of work to draw ideas from, versus having something that has really not been that well thought out. And now we have to do all this thinking for the first time. That just, it can be done, but you're just starting off with a more shallow idea. So hopefully you all have enjoyed the stream today. If you have enjoyed what you have seen here, I encourage you to check out my website, practicalscreenwriting.com. You can see it below right here. I hope to see you in the next stream. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you next time.